Hi, bright soul. If you're carrying the ache of childhood emotional neglect, the absence of the parent you needed, or the pain your younger self carries today, take a deep breath. You're in a safe place. I'm Beverly, a survivor turned owner, a messenger of grace, and a life coach who learned to let God meet and heal the younger me. Now, I want to help you understand your story. I want God to restore and heal your inner child, and I want you to take ownership of your adult life. So grab your journal and your favorite drink. Let's settle in, let's breathe, and begin.
Before we get started, please note, this podcast may include discussions about emotionally difficult family dynamics, including emotionally absent or unavailable parents. Everything shared here is for educational and motivational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please seek support from a licensed professional if you need it.
Well, hello, bright souls. Before we begin today's episode, I just want to speak to the part of you that's been trying to heal and you've been doing it so quietly. You want to go to therapy, but it feels just too heavy, and you want to call me up for coaching, but it's just a little bit of a big step. I understand that. So here's what I did for you. I created a self-paced mini course, and it's based on this month's topic, healing from emotionally absent parents. It's a gentle, private way for you to be able to understand the patterns and the triggers. You'll gain clarity and you'll feel like you're in a coaching session without being in a coaching session. You'll go at your own pace and you'll be in your own space. If this mini course is good for you and you love it and you want to dig a little deeper, you can also sign up for a one-on-one coaching session with me. And in your one-on-one sessions with me, you'll gain clarity and take ownership of your life. So start your mini course today, and I can't wait to see you there. See you soon. Well, hello, bright souls. Hi, welcome to Walk in Wisdom Wednesday. I am so excited yet again that you have decided to join me on this Wednesday. I hope you guys had an awesome week. And I know that in some terms we say hump day. We have to get over the middle of the week hump, right? So Wednesday does tend to be a little bit more challenging because we look behind us and what we've accomplished, and yet we still have to look ahead of us and where we have to go in order to make it to the weekend. But I know you guys can do it. And thank you so much for joining me. We are diving into the two most identified shaping parents, the narcissistic parent and the enmeshing parent. Bright souls, today I want to do something just a little bit different. Now, I know in the past you've experienced some of my creativity when it comes to trying to get the message out and help you to understand. I do like to change it up sometimes because I don't want to be monotonous all the time. I like to add a little bit of storytelling. So I want to read to you three real life stories. And I'm going to use our technology to help me with this. And these are going to be the kind of stories people share online when they are finally ready to tell the truth about what's happening in their lives behind closed doors, when they're wanting to share their story. These stories will not be dramatic. They're not going to be exaggerated, and they are not written to provide shock value. They're just going to be honest. They're going to be situations that you may recognize in your own life. And they're going to be the kind of moments that make you stop and say, you know what? I lived that life and I felt that. I understand that. And I didn't know anyone else was going through this, or I didn't have the words to put to what I'm experiencing. Sometimes the most powerful wisdom doesn't come from a lesson, it comes from just being able to see and experience your own reflection. And sometimes that reflection has to be in someone else's story. So, as you listen, I want you to pay close attention to what hits you, what stirs up inside of you, and what makes you finally feel like someone understands. These stories are about you, but because they might help you understand yourself in a new way, they're going to be for you.
Story 1: The Phone Call That Changed Everything. I'm 34, and last month I finally realized my mom doesn't call to check on me. She calls to check her access to me. I had just gotten home from work, exhausted, and she called saying, "I just had a feeling something was wrong with you." Nothing was wrong. I was just tired. But within 5 minutes, she had turned it into, "You never call me first. You're drifting away. I guess I'm not important anymore." I used to fold every time, but that night, something in me snapped into place. I said, "Mom, I'm okay. I'm just tired. I'm not having this conversation again." She hung up on me. I cried afterward, not because she hung up, but because I finally saw the pattern. It wasn't concern. It was control wrapped in worry. And for the first time in my life, I didn't chase her. I didn't apologize. I didn't explain. I just let the silence sit. And honestly, it felt like the first real breath I've taken in years. I realized I do not have to apologize for my feelings, and I'm not responsible for hers. It is okay to speak my feelings and set the boundaries. Respect has to go both ways.
Right? So, the phone call that changed everything, that's about someone who uses guilt or emotional pressure to control you. That's not love. And it's not God. First John chapter 4 verse 18, it says, "There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear." See, guilt and fear and pressure, they're not the tools of God, and they are not a healthy part of a relationship. When you listen to this story, it should teach you that you are not required to respond to guilt. Anyone that has to guilt shame you into having a relationship with them, and I'm even going to extend this past parents. Anybody in your life that has to guilt shame you into having a relationship with them is not of God. You are not responsible for someone else's emotional reactions. You get to choose peace, and you get to choose it without apologizing for it. God calls you into freedom, not emotional captivity. If God doesn't call us to have a guilt trip to serve and to worship Him, and we get to do it freely, why do we have to accept that from anyone else? Let's go into story number 2.
Story 2: The Day I Stopped Explaining Myself. I grew up in a family where respect meant obedience and silence. If you questioned anything, you were disrespectful. If you had a boundary, you were ungrateful. If you had a different opinion, you were rebellious. Last Thanksgiving, my dad asked why I don't visit as often. I told him calmly because I don't feel emotionally safe here. He laughed, actually laughed. Then said, "You're too sensitive. You always have been." Normally, I would have defended myself, explained myself, tried to prove my feelings were valid, but something in me shifted. I just said, Okay, and went back to my plate. He didn't know what to do with that. No argument, no justification, no emotional labor, just a boundary he couldn't bulldoze. I left early that night, not in anger, in peace. And on the drive home, I realized I don't owe anyone a debate about my well being, and that is okay for me to sit with. I am okay setting boundaries, and I am okay if he doesn't understand.
Story number 2, it resonated with me so much. Setting healthy boundaries, it's not about being rebellious. It's about growing up and being an adult. You know, I want to say this, and it's my caveat to you guys. If you're still dealing with your parents and you're trying to set healthy boundaries, can I tell you something? Be respectful. There's no need to argue or be disrespectful towards them. You have to be respectful. It only comes back to you if you don't. I think about a story that my husband tells me often, and he talks about when he used to work corrections. And he knew that in order to get the inmates to cooperate, he would have to make sure that he was respectful towards them, and they would be respectful back. See, everybody has a place and everybody knows their responsibility. However, you have to be respectful towards each other and set healthy boundaries. In Matthew's chapter 5, verse 37, it says, "Let your yes be yes and your no be no." See, Jesus even taught about clarity and simplicity and emotional honesty. It's okay to be honest about how you feel and what you're going through, but you have to be respectful about it. Jesus didn't teach over explaining and trying to rationalize. He taught being simple, don't over explain, and get your point across. He knew how to get his point across, even to those who didn't believe. So, in this particular story, you should understand that you don't have to explain yourself. You don't owe anybody an explanation. You get to choose the emotional safety without feeling guilty. And you can walk away from a conversation that's not going anywhere, meaning you don't have to argue about it. Just say, "This is how I feel," and that's it. God honors the truth, not emotional chaos. So let's go into story number 3 and see how that works out.
Story 3. When I realized I was the family regulator. I'm the oldest daughter, which means I was the emotional shock absorber for everyone. My mom's anxiety, my dad's anger, my siblings' chaos. I didn't know it was unhealthy. I thought it was love. Last year, during a therapy session, my counselor asked, "Who regulates you?" I couldn't answer. I just sat there and cried because it hit me. No one ever had. 2 weeks later, my mom called me crying because my brother made a decision she didn't like. She wanted me to talk sense into him and calm her down. For the first time, I said, "Mom, that's not my job." She went silent, then said, "Wow, you've changed." And I said, "I needed to." She didn't like it, but I slept better that night than I had in months, is because I finally understood. God never asked me to carry the emotional weight of an entire family. They just got used to me doing it.
Right. So I think number 3 is the hardest one, especially if you have siblings. See, my aunt raised me and she had 2 other children, and I call them my brothers, although they're my cousins biologically. Mm, However, there is still that sibling relationship and dynamic, and we're all adults past the age of 40. And sometimes parents can go between each of your siblings. And because they want the family to feel cohesive, they don't realize that everyone has their own individual lives. And the weight of one sibling can seem greater than the others because they want everyone to behave and everyone to come together. And understanding that, I definitely understand that. However, as adults, we go our own separate ways. We have our own ideas, we have our own thoughts, we have our own ways that we want to live our lives, and we're not responsible for each other's decision. We're only responsible for our own. God never asked us to carry the emotional weight of the entire family. Now, I understand that relationship is important, very important. So, we go to Bible and we see what Bible says. Galatians chapter 6 verse 5. Each one should carry their own load. You can't get any simpler than that. You can't get any clearer than that. This is God's design that every person is responsible for their own emotions. They're responsible for their own choices, and they're also responsible for their own healing. We have to work out our own salvation with trembling. When we stand before the throne, we are going to be held responsible for ourselves as individuals. I share these stories with you because I want you to understand that being the strong one is a survival technique. It's not your identity. You are allowed to step out of being the fixer, of being the mediator, of being the one that has to bring everybody together. That is not your responsibility. You are not responsible for regulating everyone else's emotion. Your parents aren't responsible for regulating everyone's emotion. Everyone has to be responsible for themselves. You get to set that tone. Our parents are only reliving what they learned from generation to generation. And a lot of times, those generational teachings, they didn't teach boundary. Yeah, they taught fear, they taught obedience, they taught you have to be respectful and do what I say. And it didn't matter what age you are. I used to hear all the time, I don't care how old you are, you're still my child. I used to hear that all the time. And that is just a fear technique. That's just a way of saying, I still have control over you. Instead of saying, you know what? I taught you well. I am going to allow you to make your own decisions. It doesn't mean that you don't seek guidance and wisdom from them because they do. They know more. They've been on this earth longer. A lot of times they can, but it's a conversation instead of I am going to tell you what to do. And we have to retrain how people treat us. We have to train our parents how to treat us. And a lot of times that's not easy. And a lot of times, I'm going to be honest with you, is not accepted. But that's okay. Just like in story number 1 and 2, especially story number 2, it's okay for me to sit in it. To sit in the fact that I set a boundary and I don't have to go back and replay it and feel guilty about it. So, Bryce, I'm going to ask you a few questions. Where in your life are you confusing someone else's guilt tripping with genuine care? How many phone calls have you received and I'm just checking in on you? And sometimes the checking in is genuine care. But when it goes into intrusion and I'm telling you what to do and you shouldn't feel that way and oh, I'm your parent, I should know everything. No. What about what conversations do you have to keep explaining yourself? Even though that nothing is going to ever change. You have to keep explaining over and over again. This is a decision that I made. You had an opportunity to live your life and make your decisions and learn from your mistakes. But this is my decision. This is the way I want to live my life. And finally, whose emotions are you still carrying that were never yours to hold? You are not the glue that keeps the family together. That's another way of control. That's another way of guilt tripping. People have to live like they want to live, and they are held accountable for their lives. Bright soul, I hope that you really take these stories and you sit with them. And I want you to remember something. You're not the only one who lived or who goes through these moments. You're not the only one who had to untangle the guilt from love and set boundaries and require respect. You're not the only one who had to step back and say, this isn't healthy for me anymore. These stories, they resonate with so many people. They're not here to make you angry and they're not here to stir up any trouble. They're here to remind you that what you've been feeling inside, they're real. What you've noticed, it's valid. And what you're trying to change in your life, it does matter. If any part of this resonates with you individually, I want you to see yourself as an overcomer. I want you to know, and I'm going to keep repeating this, you're not behind. You're not failing. You're not overreacting. You're not doing anything that's hindering your progress. You are finally waking up to the fact that, hey, I'm learning who I am. It's time for me to heal. And it's time for me to heal where I have an opportunity to learn and love my life, love the life that God gave me so that I can learn how to love others, so that I can learn to love God with all of me. Anything that comes against that, anything that interferes with that is going to interfere with your relationship with God. And a lot of times, our relationship with our parents indicates how our relationship with God is. And we have to break that cycle. So, as you go into the rest of this week, I know you're getting ready to go into Friday, and we are going to have a fact check Friday to break all of this down. I just want you to take one thing from today, one story, and let it sit with you. I don't want it to overwhelm you. I don't want it to shame you. I don't want it to burden you, but I do want it to guide you, strengthen you, and give you the opportunity to take ownership of your life. You're allowed to grow and you're allowed to change. And you are allowed to make decisions that support your emotional and spiritual health. Bright soul, I want you to keep walking in this truth. I want you to keep healing. And I want you to continue being courageous. Because with God, all things are possible. Have a great week. Well, Bright Soul, I pray today's episode met you with God's gentleness. If something touched your heart, I would really love to hear from you. You can leave me a review on Apple Podcast, or you can send me an email and share what God stirred in your heart. Or if you want to go deeper, you can order your Bright Soul Bundle Journal. It's on sale this month. It's a quiet way to meet God and meet yourself. Join me every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday as we keep healing with God. Until then, let your soul breathe.